This is another in the series of reports on what we call the Randall Lewis Seminar, hosted by the Center for Sustainable Suburban Development. And we're honored today to have with us the District Attorney of Riverside County, Michael Hestrin. Last night was a seminar. Room was full, and we met a number of questions, and it was really an outstanding presentation and so we'll cover that ground that last night that I think all of us who were together in that room valued. There are in California some 58 counties, and thus 58 district attorneys. I guess Michael Hestrin said before that even Alpine County has a district attorney. What do district attorneys do let me just read from the mission statement briefly. The district attorney of Riverside County is the public prosecutor acting on behalf of the people, vigorously enforces the law, pursues the truth, and safeguards the rights of all to ensure that justice is done on behalf of our community. Second point, the district attorney works with every component of the criminal justice system to protect the innocent, to convict and appropriately punish the guilty, and to protect the rights of victims. And third, the district attorney also works within our community to prevent and deter crime and to promote public safety now and for the future generations. The official mission statement of the DA for Riverside County, and I suspect quite a similar one you would find on other websites, right, for DAs throughout California.
I would point out that when I took office, I added the section about crime prevention. That had not been previously in our mission statement. And as you heard from my presentation last night, I do believe, as much as I believe being tough on crime and enforcement is important, I also believe very strongly in intervention and prevention as important avenues that the DA must lead on.
Also, and DA's office is a large and complicated organization. What 700?
Just about 700, yeah.
700 employees doing many different things. This is, we talked about, it's the third 100 days. You sworn in January 5th, 2015. So, 10 months. How has the 10 months been?
You know, it's been a whirlwind. The first 3 months went by, my head was spinning, so much was coming at me and my newly formed executive staff. I think 10 months in, we're making tremendous changes, we're making tremendous progress. We're still very busy, we work long hours, but I think it's good. I think we've gotten a good start.
Well, one of the things that I would recommend anyone do is that if you go online and look at the Office of District Attorney and the kind of website to meet DA, beyond the title of DA, you begin to find something about the background and the outlook of Michael Hestrin. And I thought I'd just, partly as an academic, share just a couple paragraphs of this. Hestrin was born in Coachella Valley, graduated in 1993 from the University of Arizona in Tucson with a bachelor's degree in history. After college, he spent a year living in Mexico with relatives working as a reporter for a small newspaper based in Guadalajara. He then returned to the United States to begin his legal studies at Stanford University, which I know from efforts of UCR students that is not easily, admission is not easily obtained. Hestrin graduated from Stanford in 1997 with both a Juris Doctorate in law and a master's degree in Latin American studies. I don't know how many of your colleagues did that. My guess is not many.
Not many. There was just a few of us that pursued dual degrees.
You can see the number of outstanding awards he received as a prosecutor. He's also taught classes, I guess, at Azusa Pacific particularly, and for somebody who's teaching political science, you did teach American government, an introduction to law and criminal procedure. I thought it was interesting to see a little bit about your own background, that your father was a police officer in Palm Springs, And your mother moved to Palm Springs from Mexico in her early teens and graduated from Palm Springs High School. Your father was, a LA County Sheriff's deputy before that, and said during his tenure as a Palm Springs police officer, Hestron's father worked private security for Frank Sinatra. Did you have a chance to meet Frank Sinatra?
I did, yes, when I was very young, obviously.
And that Hestron's mother, who came to the United States to learn English as a teenager, eventually became a state social worker and devoted her career to working with abandoned and abused children. During the last years of her career, she became an expert in the field and began testifying in child custody proceedings on behalf of the state. She is currently retired and working part-time as a Spanish language interpreter at Children's Hospital. Hestron currently lives in Temecula with his wife. You speak Spanish?
I do. I'm fluent in Spanish. It was sort of, I always say I was sort of my first language in the sense that I learned Spanish and English at the same time. So in the Coachella Valley, where I have an enormous family out there, my mom was the last of 12 siblings. Wow. And so me being her firstborn, I was surrounded always by aunts and uncles and a beautiful, great extended family that I'm very fortunate to have that. So I grew up around that language.
Well, there is a person behind the title of DA, and you have some sense of that. But there was an article in the Press Enterprise column that really was the invitation for the district attorney to speak, and that was talking about the rise in crime that was occurring in 2015 in Riverside County, and then the question is, why is that, and what can be done? But I think the first question is, crime data is very hard for outsiders to make sense of. There are all these kind of numbers, and so what is happening in terms of crime in Riverside County?
Well, first, Ron, let me start with a disclaimer. We can't say that that crime is spiraling out of control and that we should all run for the hills. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, when we look at the crime data that we're seeing across Riverside County, and specifically including all of the cities that have police departments, when you compare that to a year ago, we're seeing significant increases in almost every category of crime and in every city. And when I say significant, many times it's a double-digit increases. So when you see that, because normally when crime goes up, say during times of recession or economic downturn, crime will tick up. It'll tick up a few percentage points, and usually it's focused in what we call hotspots. So certain parts of a county, crime will go up, but in most other places it stays flat or even goes down. What you're seeing here is different, and so these numbers are early, and so I would say they're an early warning indication, but you're seeing widespread increases in crime across Riverside County.
Well, there was an article that appeared in the press talking about crime statistics in areas served by the Sheriff's Department. Last night you presented those, plus maybe you could walk us through some of those, what you find in cities across this county. Here's
a county, if you can see the slide, it shows the rate of increase in Riverside County. And again, like all these slides, all of the following slides are going to be formatted in a similar way, with comparison January to June 2014, right next to January to June 2015. So first half of 2015. And I would point out that why this time frame is important, or particularly important, is because Prop 47, which is one of the main components of this overall realignment of criminal justice, went into effect only last fall, in the fall of 2014. And so this year now is the first full year that we're going to see possibly the effects. And so here's what we've seen. In the first half of 2015, as compared to the first half of last year, in the unincorporated and contract cities, violent crime is up more than 10%. Property crime is up 6.7%. Total crime is up 7%. So that's a big swath of Riverside County. So that in and of itself, I think, is alarming, and that was reported in local newspapers. But what sometimes doesn't get reported with the crime stats, and I think what does, as you say, cause some confusion or some, not necessarily knowing how to read the statistics, is that we typically skip over the cities. But if you look at all of the cities, we wanted to look at the cities to say, well, is this trend that we're seeing in the county, is that also corroborated in a sense by the crime in the cities? And it is, unfortunately. So for Cathedral City, violent crime is up 26.9%, property crime is up 14.49%, and total crime up more than 15%. These are very significant increases. The same for Desert Hot Springs, and I won't go over every single one of these slides, but your viewers can see the stats there. They speak for themselves. Desert Hot Springs has had really high increases in property crimes, a decrease in violent crime, but property crime, for example, car thefts have gone up 85% in Desert Hot Springs. And we are seeing car thefts and property crimes. There's more of at least a link, or at least a suspicion that that's going to be linked to realignment. But I'll finish up here. The city of Riverside has seen crime go up moderately. It's property crime is up 6.38%, violent crime up 3.19%.
These percentages for Riverside become more important because there's a large number we're talking about.
Yes.
So
these are large numbers, yeah. So if even given those large numbers, for example, robbery is up 14.4%. And again, overall thefts are up 8.9%. So concerning for a city as large as Riverside to have that kind of an increase is concerning. We go down to now Murrieta, which is widely known as our safest city, right? And but Murrieta is what this slide shows, is that they're not immune. They've had violent crime has increased significantly. This says 147%. I think you have to discount that because of the smaller numbers. And if you can see the numbers, 21 violent incidents last year at this time and 52 now. So while that is concerning, we can't really say, well, because any increase there is going to show up in large percentages. But look at property crime, and you look at the comparison to last year, property crime is up more than 20%. And those numbers are large enough that I think they're statistically relevant. Banning and Beaumont are having big increases in crime as well. Beaumont, for example, violent crime is up 58%.
is there any city where crime was not up in the Riverside County?
No. No city there. For example, Corona, it's up. Now, in some places that you see Corona, for example, property crime has decreased 3.29%. Violent crime is up 4.49% there. But then when you look closely at the Corona numbers, again, and Corona is a little bit like Riverside, large numbers and large population. Robberies are up 20% in Corona. Larceny is up 7.9%. So that's very similar to Riverside as well.
So there's this pattern you see, and how did you first kind of what led you to examine these sort of figures and ask the questions that are posed here?
So when some of those sweeping changes went into effect, I think myself and many other district attorneys felt that we were going to see an increase in crime. And so we began watching these numbers, and early on it was too early. Yeah. And we didn't see an increase in crime after the early parts of realignment. But after Prop 47 went into effect, we started gathering these numbers and waiting. Frankly, we were waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I can't say that it's dropped yet, but it looks like it is.
Why don't you walk people? I think people have some notion of realignment. There were people in state prisons that have been now in county prisons. In 47 that had something to do with sentencing, but maybe you walk us through.
Sure. Those went into effect in the fall of 2011. AB 109 went into effect. What that did is it changed, broadly changed the sentencing scheme, the sentencing program that we have in California. And for a slew of quote-unquote low-level crimes, these are still felonies, no longer would someone convicted of that crime go to state prison or even be eligible for state prison. They would, from there on out, be housed in the county jail. So that was a big change. The problem for Riverside was that we already had a jail system that was filled to capacity. Because when realignment went into effect, Riverside County, with its population of 2.2 to 2.3 million people, had a jail system of only 3,000 beds. That's very low per capita compared to our neighboring counties. To give you a great example, San Bernardino County, that has a lower population than Riverside County, has double the bed space. San Diego County has a higher population than Riverside County, has not quite double, but 5,500 beds compared to 3,000 beds. So we lagged far behind in that. So the net effect of, or the initial effect of AB 109 was to put numerous inmates and tremendous pressure on our already overcrowded jail, so that we began releasing inmates, because we're under a federal mandate, every institution is in California, to keep the population below a certain level. So once it goes above that level, the courts require the sheriff to release people.
Yeah, but what difference does the low number of beds mean for Riverside? What are the consequences of us having only 3,000 beds?
Well, it means that we couldn't hold people at the local level. For those local crimes, those new AB 109 crimes, we simply could not hold anybody in our jail. So let me explain how AB 109 is supposed to work and is working in some counties. So if in another county, I won't even pick one, but let's say a fictitious county that has an appropriate number of bed space for the population, after conviction of a low-level crime, and I say quote-unquote low-level because car thefts are considered low-level crimes. To the victim of that crime, it maybe doesn't seem so low-level, but a defendant is, say he's found guilty or pleads guilty, is sentenced to a punishment, say, of 2 years in our jail for that crime, and then would then go into our jail the same way that same person used to go into prison.
State prison.
State prison, yeah. But now the prison term is served in our local jail. This is what the new law was about. So if we had enough room, we could hold that person for 2 years and therefore effectively punish. I don't think it makes that big of a difference where the sentence is served, although I will say that state prison has far more rehabilitative programs than our local jail, because our jails weren't ever designed as prisons. But that aside, the time in jail, if we could hold someone for their full sentence, this wouldn't be so bad, or it wouldn't be as bad as it is. What really happened in Riverside is that since we are among the lowest in jail beds, we became the highest in early releases. And we began releasing inmates from our jail, at a tremendous rate, the #1 in the state. We released, in 2.5 years, we released more than 30,000 inmates early. Now, these are not people waiting for their waiting for their trial. These are people that have been sentenced to a term, and they're doing just a fraction of that term. Now, it got so bad that people sentenced to 2 years in our jail were doing only 10 days before their release. So you can understand that from a prosecutor's perspective, charged with keeping the public safe, and on the police chiefs and the sheriff as well, we can't do our job in that situation. So that is before Prop 47 went into effect.
And Prop 47 is what?
Now, Prop 47 went into effect last fall, and it sought to ease the overcrowding at the jails by decriminalizing certain crimes. So what it did is it took simple possession of all drugs, including heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, crack cocaine, even the more serious drugs, and it made them misdemeanors. It also took all theft crimes where the value of what was stolen was under $950 and made that a misdemeanor. And so it decriminalized in some ways, because right now in our jails, we have no misdemeanor folks in our jails. Getting a misdemeanor in Riverside County is a lot like getting a traffic ticket. You don't go to jail anymore. So Prop 47 was supposed to ease that burden that was leading to the release. But again, Riverside County is so low in bed space that it did help a little bit, but instead of now doing 10 days, that car theft case, now the defendant does more than 10 days, he's doing maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks on a 2-year sentence. So it did help on the margins, but it didn't solve the problem. The problem is still there, and I think the problem was made worse by 47, because those folks that used to come into our system as, say, drug addicts, drug addicts, locking up drug addicts for long periods of time doesn't help them. It doesn't help anybody. It's terribly expensive. I agree with that. We need to find a different solution. But they come into our system now, and they have no incentive to enter a year-long drug rehabilitation program, because the only thing they're facing now is a misdemeanor.
You had the judge who's in charge of the drug court was there last night. What did he say?
He stood up in my defense, I guess, or I was making a point and having a discussion with some of the folks in the audience, and the judge, Judge Canellis, basically confirmed what I was saying, and that is that as he sees it, the individuals who have drug addiction and substance abuse problems, whereas before we used to be able to say to them, okay, you have a long string of convictions and you're involved in the criminal justice system, we're going to either send you to jail or prison for a significant amount of time, or you can go into this drug rehabilitation. If you succeed, we will dismiss your case. That's the carrot and the stick approach, as he said it. And the point he made yesterday was, we've lost the stick, so no one's interested in the carrot. And that's really as succinct as I think I could put it. We've lost the stick, and now we have no way to have people go into those difficult year-long programs.
You were challenged last night by one of the persons in the audience saying, but Prop 47 brought funding for, I assume, mental health and for rehabilitation, and so when it was changed the dynamics because there were funding sources to help.
My response to
the response was powerful. What did you say last night?
I said we haven't seen a penny of that, and I don't expect that we will. First of all, the savings, and I believe there probably are savings to the state, but those savings are speculative, and they're not going to come anytime soon. They're many, many years down the road. And what we've been told by Sacramento at this point, by the state government, is when those savings are realized sometime in the future, they'll be put into a sort of a central holding, and we'll have to apply for those savings and compete like we compete for grants. That bothers me for a couple of reasons. Riverside County always gets short shrift when it comes to state money, but the savings is the burden is borne by the people of Riverside County, because they're the ones that have to deal with the increased crime and those other things.
But if you voted for 47, part of what you're voting for was this increase in resources, right?
Right, and we're not seeing it. It was a bait and switch.
Yeah.
It really was. And that's my other problem with 47. It didn't deliver on what it promised to do.
In one other illustration you gave last night, I thought was interesting. If I steal one car, or then I steal another, and could you?
Sure. One of the cornerstones of our criminal justice system is this idea of progressive punishment, and it's really a common sense idea. If someone comes in, commits a crime, it's their first crime or first offense, then they're much more likely to get probation or a diversion or some kind of deal that keeps them out of prison and jail and tries to put them on the right path. However, if that person continues to offend, it's particularly offending the same crime, we have to have a way to increase the punishment. And under Prop 47, those changes I've just described, one of the things that really strikes at the heart of the criminal justice system and its efficiency is that Prop 47 did away with progressive punishment for those crimes that it dealt with. So for example, under Prop 47, someone commits a theft of under $950. That is always going to be a misdemeanor, no matter how many times the offense is committed. So it even gets, we hear stories from police that make an arrest of a shoplifter that literally has a calculator out because they want to make sure that they don't steal the $950. So they'll put a limit of $900. Now that person could steal $900 today. That's going to be a misdemeanor if they get caught. Even if they get caught, they could go out tomorrow, steal another $900. That's another misdemeanor. See, that's a problem. We've got to have a way to progress.
And DAs across the state are organizing about that.
Yes.
And talking about that.
Yes, there's got to be a legislative fix so that someone should be able to earn their way to a felony. And I think that's where I think the DAs are heading.
Well, DA, Chief Prosecutor, but last night you also talked about solutions, and the solution wasn't simply prosecute and put somebody in jail. And maybe you could walk us through the kind of framework that, as you approach this business of being a district attorney.
Sure.
I thought it was really well done, and I think the audience found it important and new. And share with us, if you can,
Sure.
how you approach this question of solutions.
Sure. And let me say, first of all, I think that many people think of DAs as, you know, very black and white law and order, and I certainly am law and order, but that we somehow want to fill up the jails as quickly as possible. And that's just not true. None of the DAs that I know are like that. But I do have, I think that we have to have a balanced approach. And I'll go through some slides in a minute, but I'll give some credit. Our Attorney General, a couple of years ago, she made a statement that really stuck with me. And she said, it's a false choice to choose between tough enforcement and crime prevention and intervention. We don't have to choose, we have to do both. And that stuck with me because I agree with that 100%. We've got to do both. We've got to do everything we can do to keep the public safe. We're not going to be able to stop every crime, of course, but we've got to have a fully balanced and an honest approach to crime. So this is what I've come up with. I use a cliche, of course, the three-legged stool, but there's really three parts of an effective crime prevention strategy. And my PowerPoint last night, I entitled it Crime Strategies, because I think that's really what I'm really pushing and what's new. We have enforcement, and that's the standard thing that we do, the enforcement through the courts. We file 60,000 cases a year.
Repeat that number.
60,000.
Which is more than 1,000 a week.
That's right. We file 60,000 criminal cases a year. And so
how many come, that's the one you file. How many don't you file that come in? What would you think the ratio is?
Well, we have a high filing ratio, but there's a good number that we don't file. So, and there's even probably a bigger number where they come in and we send them back for more investigation. So it's a lot of work, and our folks are stretched thin. I will say, and I'm not here to talk budgets, but we're down 141 positions at the DA's office over the last 5 years. So we're stretched thin. But enforcement really has two parts. There's that reactive part that we do in the courts, and then there's the parts that our investigative bureau does by joining with task forces around the county. And I think that is also a critical part. So when you look at the court work, it's important that we be fair, that we seek justice, but that we're able to punish and set the punishments in Riverside County that is enough to deter crime. And that's where AB 109 and Prop 47 is really undercutting us. We can't do that part of the job. Now you switch over to the proactive part of enforcement, and our investigators are involved in virtually every task force in the county. We work with federal agents, we work with state and local agents, and I'd like to just go through a couple of those.
Yeah, that was impressive last night.
Here's some of the task forces that we work on. We actually run the SAFE task force, which is a task force that specifically goes after predators, child predators. We have the gang task forces that we have, many of our investigators are on that. Major narcotics team. We have our catch team. We work with federal and state.
Are cartels involved in stuff in Riverside County?
Absolutely. Riverside County, there's drugs and guns are pouring into Riverside County because of our location. The biggest market in Southern California is Los Angeles, and we have freeways running through our county, north, south, east, west, which make us a great place to bring drugs in and stage. And so we are very aggressive in trying to disrupt cartel operations, and we do that with the DEA, and we do that with the FBI, and we do that with numerous other task forces. Our catch team, very proud of their work. They scour the internet for folks that are using the internet and the anonymity of the internet to commit crimes. couple other things. We have a real estate task force, which is new, real estate fraud task force, public corruption task force, it's important. We also have gang impact teams that go out and do high-level gang intelligence work. So our Bureau of Investigation is incredibly talented, and we've got 106 sworn investigators, and we have really unleashed them to do this work, and it's important work that needs to be done. I do want to clarify, we're not a frontline police agency. We don't respond to calls. We're never going to be the first ones going through the door. What our men and women do in the Bureau is that they provide that behind-the-scenes support for large-scale investigations. And that is really important that we continue to do that. So the next thing I want to talk about is, yesterday I had some photos, and I didn't spend a lot of time on this one, but that is a drug trafficking organization chart, and you see all the connections. And so each of those connections can be tried to be disrupted, and each of those individuals we need to keep track of. So you can see the amount of work that goes into this. The other leg of the stool, the second leg of the stool, I believe is crime intervention. And crime intervention to me means that when someone is already involved in a life of crime, meaning that they've already gone a significant way down the path. Now, not so far that they're committing murders and rapes and those things, because that we're not interested in, we don't even try. To be honest, to rehabilitate people that commit those level of crimes. But someone who's already gone down the road of drug addiction and thefts and those kinds of crimes, the courts the DA's office working with the courts, working with our public defender counterparts, have set up a series of what we call collaborative courts. I believe in the model. Essentially what it is you take a certain individual who qualifies, and they go into the special court and they get what we call wraparound services. They get social services, mental health services, they get drug addiction services. and they go through this process that's almost like a class. So the judge is ordering them back and checking on their progress. And I've attended many of these court sessions, and sometimes an individual comes in who showed great promise, and the judge says, well, I see here that you backslid, that you had a relapse. And so then they don't send them away. They say, well, what's the plan? And they keep at them, if that makes sense. And they got the resources. These programs work. They deserve our support. They deserve the community support. In Riverside, we have a mental health court. We have a veterans court, which we're very proud of. We have...
It's the one that Mark Johnson...
Yes, Judge Johnson started that, and I think we have an excellent veterans court in Riverside. We have the drug courts, which are dwindling because of Prop 47, but they're still there. We have, on the horizon, we have homeless court, which I think is another way of trying to deal with this very difficult problem. You know, homeless population, they have mental health issues many times, drug addiction issues. So being homeless is a symptom, not the cause. And so these courts, we have attorneys that are assigned to these courts. When I took office, I created in the DA's office for the first time a collaborative courts unit, a standalone unit. The reason I did that was because we needed to have a supervisor and a team that focused completely on this kind of crime intervention and come up with new ideas and be fully integrated into that way of thinking. Because it's different. We're not trying to lock up everybody. We're trying to get people to give up their criminal lifestyle. And that's a different objective. So that's the crime intervention. That's the second leg. The third leg, and these are some photos of Veterans Court, Ruck Challenge that we did.
Yeah, most of these I think are unknown to the general public, right?
Yes.
They just don't.
They don't know that we do this.
Don't know we do this.
Yeah. Now the third area is crime prevention, and this is where I started a crime prevention unit when I took office in January. I asked there's 4 areas where our efforts are going to be focused. One, we have in the crime prevention unit. Well, let me tell you the 4 areas. One is the daily work of the crime prevention unit. Two would be a countywide volunteer initiative that we're pushing inside the DA's office. Third would be a community outreach committee, which we're forming. And fourth would be a crime prevention foundation to raise money from public-private partnership to fund some of these innovative ideas at crime prevention. So I'll go over first the day-to-day work of our crime prevention unit, if I could. First, I want to point out that, and I think this is important, this unit is made up of 12 attorneys and 1 paralegal. It's fully grant funded. We don't use any Riverside County taxpayer money. And I think that's important because times are tough, and I ask our crime prevention unit to go out and seek grants. And it's difficult, but it's important that, because when budgets shrink, these are the first areas that get cut. And for good reason, I understand that. We can't say to someone, well, we don't have the resources to prosecute your case, but yet we're over here, we're going to do crime prevention. That's not fair either. So all of this is grant funded, and it will remain that way. So we have 3 main areas that they do: the youth accountability teams, the gang awareness mentoring and education, and then our student attendance review boards. So that's their day job, basically.
Say just a word about, going to school is important, and what's the role of the DA in encouraging kids to go to school?
Well, we have, through our student attendance review boards, when we find someone who's chronically truant or absenteeism, we step in. And you may be aware, but this year, for the first time, I sent a letter to all parents advising them of the obligation under the law for them to have their child in school. And it just gives you a little signal of the different approach we're taking. We are very involved with all of our school districts. We have DAs that are assigned to each school district that are part of this team, and they deal with those kids that are not coming to school. What will happen is the parents will get a call from the DA, the deputy DA, and they'll say, not having your child in school is something that you could be charged with a crime for.
We talked a little bit before of the importance of intervention when somebody's 12 rather than somebody who's 24.
That's right. The idea is that, and I think I said this yesterday, everybody who goes to prison at one point was a kid who found themselves at a crossroads. And the problem is that after that, the crossroad or a fork in the road, after that fork in the road, it's a life of misery, of drug addiction, of crime, of criminality, of being in and out of prison and jail. And I don't say that in any pejorative sense. That's what the statistics show, that once someone reaches that kind of point of no return, they're a felon, they're labeled a felon, very difficult to get a job when you're labeled a felon. A life is difficult and very often ends up being a tragedy. So the real goal of this crime prevention is to get to those kids before they get to the crossroads. Yeah. And if we can reach them before they have that moment of truth, and I'm not naive, I know that these efforts are not going to solve the problem, but we have to make an effort. So some of our programs that we're doing in the countywide volunteerism initiative, for example, we have 700 employees, and we're asking them all to find a way to volunteer in one of these crime prevention units. And so we're also tracking the number of hours.
That was an initiative that you brought to the office?
Yes. I started that in January, and most of the employees of the DA's office are very excited about this. I will tell you that we have more than a dozen crime prevention programs now that we are either supporting or have started. And I mentioned this to you before we started the interview, but I didn't come in and say, hey, I've got all these ideas. We did this study or anything like that, and this is what I want you to do. What I said to the district attorneys and to the district attorney's office is, I want you to go out into the community and work on crime prevention. And I just said, get it done. What I got back was incredible, innovative ideas. They started knocking on my door saying, this is what I'd like to do. And so I've been so impressed with our staff in that way. Just, I feel like we've unleashed this innovation. And so we want to keep pushing, though, make sure that it's, because right now it's still small. We've got to get to scale so that we can affect the county.
Why don't you describe a few of those, because
Sure.
the last night I thought you did it very effectively.
So some of those that we support are existing programs like Big Brother, Big Sister. We're in partnership with them. But for example, Board Kids is a program started by one of our deputy DAs where it's an after-school program started on the east side of Riverside, but now it's branched off, and I think there are 4 different programs now around the county. Essentially, it's our employees meeting with kids after hours to play board games. It's as simple as you can get. The only cost involved is we collect old board games that are donated and we spend time with the kids. What happens is some of these kids lack a positive role model at home, or they've never met someone in law enforcement, and so it starts to build those bridges. We have, some very typical things like Hoops is an after-school basketball program. We also have Cops versus Kids that we participate in, another sports program. This one I always talk about, Real Men Read. This is one that I'm particularly proud of. And this was started by one of our deputy DAs named Hunter Taylor. He thought he saw the link between illiteracy and criminality, and he decided, I'm going to start a literacy program on my own. And he started collecting books, started the program on the east side of Riverside, and it's for at-risk youth, kids that are already in trouble, and they go in and they read and they have a book club. Now, I was skeptical when I first heard this. I was skeptical that it would work. I thought those kids were going to toss him out and say, I don't want to read your book. I was wrong, and I'm very happy that I was wrong. I went and visited one of these sessions, and I was just shocked at what I saw. I saw these kids, one in particular, that had been on the more serious end of the criminality. He was already running with the gang. He already had a moniker. He already was committing graffiti. The day that I visited, he had chosen a book by Kurt Vonnegut, and I listened as he described the book and the plot in his own language, in his own way, right? Yeah. But I just watched this kid light up. And after and by the way, I will say every week, one of the things that Hunter does in Real Men Read, every week he has a guest speaker. And one of the weeks after I was there, the speaker was Rusty Bailey, the mayor of Riverside. So you've got these kids that are maybe feel like they're on the outs. All of a sudden they meet the mayor and they've got this positive influence. So back to this one individual, I stopped him after the class. I said, so what are you getting out of this? Do you like it? And he looked at me and he said, before Real Men Read, I had never read a book. And this is an 11, 12-year-old young man. And he said, now I've read 4. And I said, and Kurt Vonnegut? He said, I love it. And I thought to myself, I don't know if this is for sure going to work. But I think if we can get that kid who was running with the gang, and by the way, he has stopped running with that gang, we can get that kid to read books, I mean, we have a chance. Now, the other part of it is I've asked all of our employees to get involved in community organizations. We've identified 40, probably more, and these are nonprofits or civic-minded organizations. I'd like our attorneys to go out and attend those meetings. By doing that, the public sees their district attorneys and their investigators, and also we get the feedback. And that's important too, because we do represent the people of Riverside County on matters of criminal justice, and so we need to know how we're doing and what the issues are. So
often we sort of stay within we use the word silo, but stay within our own group and don't know what's happening beyond the sort of boundaries or the limits of our own group.
When I've spoken to our employees in large gatherings, I've told them, I know this is difficult, but I need you to come out of the courts, come out of your offices, and go out into the community and challenge yourself to do that. And the response has been very good. So the last thing I'll mention is the DA's Crime Foundation. It's not up and running yet. I've had my hands full the first 6 months, but I have been working on it, and I'm working with the Community Foundation, a well-established foundation. They are allowing me to open up what's called a donor-advised fund. So I'll be under their umbrella. I'll have my own sort of board. And so I've asked a group of 16 leaders from around the county to be on the board of this foundation. They've all said yes. They're I think very, I'm honored, I'm impressed with the quality of the folks that are going to be doing this. We're going to be, the first meeting is in November, it's an organizing meeting, and we'll be rolling out the foundation probably around the first of the year. So the goal of the foundation is to raise money for some of these programs. And I've, one that I didn't mention is Youth Court. Youth Court is an excellent program, but where Real Men Read takes virtually no money, because we get donated books for the kids, Youth Court takes a little bit of money because you have to organize, it's a court, you got to organize the training for the kids to run a court. So basically Youth Court is you have a juvenile offender, say someone is caught graffitiing a school, they would go into Youth Court and be tried as by their peers, and a sentence would be handed down, such as community service or something like that. Obviously no jail, but that process involves everybody and they're tried by their peers as opposed to the adult courts. It's been shown to be very effective.
Well, I want to thank you for this exchange, and thank you for coming to the seminar. I guess I don't remember this kind of discussion with any other. I've been around now at Riverside a long time. If we were to summarize, first, there is a concern with the increase in crime across this county.
I'm concerned, yeah. I'm concerned, and I'm keeping an eye on it.
And then in terms of particular 47, there's an interest in what happened to the resources that were to join it. Yeah. And then perhaps some kind of way that if somebody keeps committing the same crime, that it has the deterrence increases?
Yes, the penalty increases, and that should provide deterrence. Yeah. One thing I didn't mention is that and sadly there are people that are involved in a criminal lifestyle. So we know that it's a small number of people that are committing the majority of crimes. They know very well the weaknesses in Prop 47 and AB 109. They tell us in the courts, they tell the officers on the street, they're very aware of what they can exploit. And so we need to sort of close some of those loopholes in the law.
I think particularly in looking for resources for 47 that have not come, there are a lot of other people would be prepared, right, to join the district attorneys.
Absolutely. And I favor rehabilitation. I think that we have to rehabilitate especially on the lower end of this crime scale, because it's a much better chance that they won't reoffend. And so these resources, I'm not here saying I want more resources for me. Let's bring some of these savings and give them to mental health and give them to probation, and we could use some too, but it certainly should be a joint effort.
And on solutions, I mean, it was, if I was watching this and wanted, besides simply say, good work, is there ways that others could be helpful to the DA and to people of this county?
Absolutely. If contact us if you're interested in helping. There's always volunteering. We can take volunteers, and we can.
So the DA's office has volunteers?
We have volunteers, and we have people that come in and say, I want to work in one of your programs. Now, if they're going to work with kids, they've got to go through a rigorous background check and all that. And that's true of anything. So, as long as they're willing to do that, but there's other ways they can help. I will also tell you that I'm going to be reaching out to the chambers of commerce, all the chambers of commerce in the county, because there's more programs that we're going to unveil in this same vein that they can help with.
Exciting, serious, important. I doubt if other DAs from the other 57 were here, and not many have the kind of diverse efforts that are going on in our county, and personally congratulate you.
Oh, thank you.
And I think it is important to help tell the story, so we understand what the DA office does, and particularly how not only you prosecute, but you're also and I think you return to this third line of the mission, if I could just close this with this line, that The district attorney also works within our community to prevent and deter crime and to promote public safety now and for future generations.
Yeah.
Hope you've enjoyed this exchange.
I have, thank you.
And thank you very much. And very proud to be in Riverside County with Michael Histron as our elected district attorney. Thanks
Thank you so much, Mayor. I appreciate it.
For information or questions about this program, to learn more about future programming planned for the Randall Lewis Seminar Series, or to register and or receive email announcements from UCR's Center for Sustainable Suburban Development, please contact the center at 951-827-7830 or email at shana.conaway@ucr.edu. This program is brought to you by the following proud sponsors: the Alltech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns. And by StudioCast Pros, engaging your audience, elevating your brand, and enhancing your profits with professional quality e-learning, webcasts, and podcasts that stand out from the competition.